welcome back, or welcome your first time to WeAwake. And this is a vision that we received meditating together last summer in our home in southern Utah. We got the whole team together, and we were upstairs meditating in our meditation room, and we were all listening to the same track. And the power was palpable, the power of the field, the meditative experience, and said, we need to do this for everyone. So I think life has moved on, and here we are in the middle of this worldwide pandemic. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a naturopathic physician yesterday, and she's just talking about the tremendous stress and anxiety this is causing for so many people. And I was somewhat aware of that, but not the way a physician would be. And so one of the best things that we can do for anxiety and meditation, natural things that we can do, is meditate. And here we are. And this morning I was getting ready for this. And what do I do to prepare to lead a meditation? I meditate. But I also was listening to Alan Watts on YouTube. And I don't know if you guys know Alan Watts, but he was a thinker in the, an important thinker from maybe the late 50s into the maybe early 70s. I'm not sure he died when he died, but he died young. And just one of those people who can transmit a state of meditative consciousness just with his voice. And it just brought home how much I'd missed him. I'd read all his books when I was a much younger person, and to go back is great. And I think Ken Wilber said that he'd written out all of Alan Watts' books longhand, just to get into the mind and the style and the flow of Alan Watts. And you can see that in his writings, but that's a great deal of respect. So it just brought home that all times, but especially now in difficult times. And one of my catchwords at why I awake is, in times of greater stress, practice more, not less. So God, how many times does that save myself in my life? And so just an encouragement in this time that we are coming together. This is going to be really powerful, folks, and I'll say something about that in a moment. And that we cultivate the voice of wisdom, and not just the latest news and the latest dumb thing that somebody said, and just beat our brains with that, but to listen to the wisdom voices that we have. And Alan Watts really came today. I was actually listening to a track. I was listening to the track that we're going to listen to, and was listening to his voice at the same time. It was really a beautiful experience. And those enlightened wisdom voices transmit energy and wisdom that helps us to go deeper in our own practices. So just encourage everyone to check out Alan Watts if you haven't, or go back to him. He's still with us, and he's still blessing us with his mind and his heart and his energy and his transmission. So this is going to be a longer meditation than we're used to. It's 1 hour. So this should be really exciting and encouraging, because usually, that last 15 minutes or so, boy, meditation is just deeper and deeper. The longer you meditate, the deeper you go. And we're going to be meditating with one of my favorite meditation tracks when I really want to do some serious meditating. And it's called Infinity. And I think this is track 2, Stream of Infinity. And it has a kind of a stream water sound. It's kind of that holds it together. And Doug, the guy that has the beautiful turquoise halo, is the creator of this. Thank you so much, Doug. And I think that turquoise is a representation of his state of consciousness as a turquoise integral thinker, which I know he is. So this is what's really cool about this track. It starts out for the first 27 minutes or so, and it ramps down or up, because anyway, it prepares us with theta and delta. And then in about 27 minutes, it kicks into lambda, which is just remarkably powerful brainwave, which takes epsilon, which is about the lowest and the slowest track that we can produce sonically and wraps around gamma, which is very high frequency that is associated with compassion and wisdom and processing information and all this. And so the experience is often one of being deeply relaxed from the epsilon, but intensely focused at the same time. So it's a beautiful, beautiful track. It's not beginner stuff. That's why I think Doug put in the theta and the delta to get us ready for it. So let's go there and let us cultivate stillness in this track. And how do you cultivate stillness? By trying not to think? No. You can try that. It's a really good exercise. Just sit there and try not to think. It just drives you crazy, because at your best, you're just thinking about not thinking. And that, it's kind of that trap. But eventually, if you just give yourself permission, let your brain think, do what it does, and so it won't get panicked, and just keep thinking and kind of listen to the thoughts as you would birds in the woods or something. Just some nice, interesting static or stuff from God, but not really getting into the flow of the meaning and the content. And eventually, we begin to identify more with the spaciousness of the consciousness, pure awareness that everything arises in, and that is one definition of enlightenment. So let's see if we can have an enlightenment experience here. And if your mind wanders, it's okay. That's the practice. Just bring it back to your center, to your heart, whatever you're focusing on, your breath, and just keep coming. And the return is what strengthens our meditative muscles, if you will. And but eventually, when we get to that stillness, that inner silence, that's when the silence speaks. And I'll let everybody have their own experience of what that is like. And it's very powerful tracks, and meditating together like this around the world also adds a layer of connectedness and effectiveness to the meditation that we haven't figured out. We need to do some research on that sometime. So without further ado, let us begin our journey together. was going to say, how do you greet someone coming on an experience together like this? Is it, welcome back. Well, you were there the whole time. So anyway, thank you, Doug, and thank you everyone for that very powerful experience. And in my magic wish world, I would have everyone meditate for an hour a day. Doing that, can you imagine? And what gets you to the party? What gets you motivated to do something life transforming, like to meditate using this technology for an hour a day? That's a good question. Often it seems suffering kind of gets us to the cushion, if you will, or in this case, the cushion and the headphones. Or it could just be curiosity. It could be, I don't know, maybe wisdom that you learned from a former life and you just know this is what you do, and you just fall into it like that. And or it could be hunger. You know, it says in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "Blessed are they who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled." So that yearning for depth, that yearning for God, that yearning for spirit, that yearning for freedom from your own mind, and came up one time when Pam and we used to go to a monastery in the desert, and one time we were there and we got to know a woman who was the beekeeper. She gathered the honey from the hives of the monastery, and she had a house on the property. Beautiful place. And she was just the happiest, freest, probably most spiritual person in this whole monastery of people dedicated to the contemplative spiritual life. And why was that? Well, she'd had an injury, and I think a couple of injuries. One was associated with a sunstroke, and the other was she hit her head. And in this condition, she only had the ability to remember 2 weeks in the past. That's it, 2 weeks. And she was so free and happy. And she was delightful. I mean, she still had, she was very approachable. She wasn't weird or strange, any stranger than you guys, our normal friends. But she was a happy being. And her boyfriend said it was really frustrating because they'd get in a fight and he'd hang on to it and she'd forget about it, after the 2 week period, just, "Hi, honey." And he still wanted to mix it up. So it had its challenges. So I was kind of thinking about that, how do I want to do away with all my memories? If that were an option, sometimes I certainly think I would. Certainly, boy, there's a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, a lot of traumatic things have happened in my life, and I'm sure yours also, that I wouldn't mind letting go of. But then again, what we do with our past is how we become what we are in the present. So is there a way to own our past and at the same time be free? And I think that's what meditation can, ongoing process of making possible. And it is said in developmental psychology that the subject of your prior stage of development, say when you were a little kid, okay, say 5 or 6 years old, and we can remember that. But the subject, who you thought you were and how you saw the world and your parents and your family and the 5-year-old world was your subject. As you get older, you get to be an obnoxious teenager. You can look back and still remember your 5-year-old self, but you remember it as being an object. Oh, I remember what it was like to be little Johnny at that age, right? But it's no longer the controlling subject. So I think that we could apply that to our past and our memories if we can process these things that causes pain and causes suffering from our past. That maybe we have parents who consciously or unconsciously let us know that we just weren't ever good enough, or we weren't smart enough, or whatever uh, things that hurt us from the past, or traumatic events or traumatic losses, or violence, whatever that might be. Can we get to the point where we can own those, and they actually become the stuff that will lead us to wisdom, um, without causing us pain and suffering and depression? Or on the other hand, there were real times and relationships in our lives that were really ideal and really beautiful, and we want to get back there. We want to somehow hold on to that, and that, as the Buddha taught us, can also cause suffering. So, and I think the answer is yes, that we can do that. But boy, certainly in my case, it just takes a lot of work and a lot of practice. And the more that we can cultivate these deep states of consciousness, such as I hope everyone was experiencing today, I certainly was, um, that old subject, or that old I, becomes a he, becomes an it, becomes something we own, but it's not controlling us anymore. And the current subject, or the I sense of self, expands. Okay. And maybe some of us have experienced that in psychedelics, or near-death experiences, or one of these powerful experiences where the whole sense of identity is just completely different and infinitely expanded. And it's like, oh my gosh, and your whole drama and all your stuff, just in relationship to this I that you are at the deepest level, becomes very small. And I think as we cultivate that thing, we become more free. Okay, and we can become happier. And it is definitely not a schizoid um, uh, practice, or a schizoid way of dealing with pain. In other words, just split it off. And we do that naturally, often, with painful subjects from the past, or painful events, or painful periods from our past. And unfortunately, I mean, that's an effective short-term survival tool, because it's just too much. You can't process it. But eventually, as as time and practice and psychology and the spiritual traditions have taught us, that those things can fester in the unconscious. So I think we need to bring these things out as they come up in meditation, and as the context, the pure awareness you become more stable in being able to rest in that. We can we can own it. And in PTSD treatment, uh, they say eventually, if you're dealing with a traumatic event that happened, say you were in Afghanistan and the vehicle you were in blew up, and your best friend was next to you and he died, and you start going back there, and it's just like you're like in a 3D VR movie with the chairs vibrating. You're right there, takes you there. Eventually that can be processed by feeling the feelings that come up, anchoring in the body, but at the same time holding it in this larger conscious awareness, the waking up, that self that I awake and we awake is all about. And then you can return as necessary, or as need, to these past experiences. And it's maybe like more like looking at a black and white picture or something, as opposed to the VR. And you have it, you own it, and you can file it away and put it in its place. And you can see it with the combination of complete ownership and absolute detachment at the same time. Uh, oh, okay. And and hopefully, as we do that, we will become more free. We will become happier, and we become wiser, and be able to be there for others. And and at that point, our suffering begins to connect us, all right, with others, because we all suffer, believe it or not. And if you've had a pretty easy ride so far, don't worry. Eventually, you'll know what I'm talking about if you don't now. And suffering is it connects all human beings, and and uh, when we see we're in this together, not just philosophically, but actually, essentially, then a lot of the basic questions about how we should live our lives emerges and flows from that. And so may we be inspired by our experience today to cultivate um, a transformational practice. And again, maybe I'm hypnotically suggesting everybody meditate for an hour a day. But I do it out of the best intentions, and I think it will help us and will help yourself. And the the way to get out of our current world crises, environmentally, uh, politically, socially, um, is to evolve and become better, wiser, more compassionate beings. And uh, so that's what we do here, and that's what all the technology and all the practice and the time and the effort is to wake us up to our expanded self that completely owns who and what we are, personally, collectively, etc. But at the same time, uh, comes from the perspective of the creator, if you will, the creative energy and consciousness of the universe. So, anyway, love you guys. Thank you so much. And let us know how it's going, and let us know your experience. We appreciate you.